all they do when they do this, when the Democrats do this, by the way, is normalize right-wing sentiment. If you don't address some of the insane lies that Donald Trump is telling a mile a fucking minute, all you have done in that process is normalize these lies. And you have people on your side of the political spectrum believe it. Wonderful stuff. Oh, Trump is coming in. Fast forward into the future.
Thank you very much, everybody. Years we have been living through the worst border crisis in the history of the world. There's never been anything like it, which has brought untold suffering, misery, and death upon our land. The architect of this destruction is Kamala. When you look at the 4 years that have taken place,
Kamala.
After being named border czar, Kamala Harris will be visiting the southern border that she has completely destroyed, from what I understand, tomorrow. Why would she go to the border now, playing right into the hand of her opponent? I mean, you take a look at this. Why would you do that? There can be no justification for what she's done. There's nobody saying, oh, gee, she's done a fabulous job. She's done the worst job probably in the history of any border, not just our border. She keeps talking about how she supposedly wants to fix the border. We would merely ask, why didn't she do it 4 years ago? It's a very simple question. I can say this with everything she has. She talks about borders and taxes and all these different things. Her policies on tax, by the way, are terrible, but I can say it for everything. Why didn't she fix it almost 4 years ago? She's got no plans, got no talent, got no ability to do it. I'm here today to present you with the facts and only the facts about how
boring. Talk about
Comrade
Eric.
Kamala Harris
Talk about Eric
willfully
Adams.
threw open our border, helping to virtually destroy our country. Our country's never been under.
He's more winded than Sam Sulek doing bicep curls, bro. What the?
Secure border in U.S. history.
Boo.
With the lowest illegal immigration on record. You know the chart. I love that chart. I love that chart. I probably wouldn't be here right now except for that chart. Those who at our borders were captured, detained, and quickly sent back home under the Trump administration. But on her first day in office, Kamala Harris terminated every single Trump policy that sealed and secured the border. She ordered an immediate stop to the completion of the border wall. It was almost complete. We built hundreds and hundreds of miles of wall, and it worked. I always said walls and wheels. Everything else is obsolete, but walls and wheels, and this wall worked. And we were ready to build and throw up another 200. Could have been done within weeks. Everything was complete. The wall was all built, ready to go, laying there, ready to be fixed.
Laying there.
All they had to do is throw it up, and you would have had an extra 200 miles of wall, far more than I promised in the election. She suspended all deportations. She instituted catch and release across the entire southern border. And we had catch and release also, but we released in Mexico. Her catch and release was to release in the United States and never see them again. She sent Congress a bill demanding amnesty for all illegal aliens, every single illegal alien, even if they're drug dealers, human traffickers. She wanted amnesty for everybody. Radical left. This is a radical left person. She terminated Remain in Mexico, something that took me and a lot of talent, a lot of other people, but it took a lot of talent to get from the president of Mexico, a good man, but we got it. You had to remain in Mexico. You couldn't come in under any circumstance. You weren't allowed into the United States until we checked it out, and many people did not come in and were not allowed to come in because they didn't check out. They were drug dealers. They were gang members. They were in jail for in a couple of cases. We wouldn't let them in, and she canceled every Safe Third agreement. Anybody here, I think, would know what that is, but that was a horrible thing that she did. And she canceled Remain in Mexico. Here we have something, Remain in Mexico. You don't have to explain it. She canceled. She ordered ICE to halt the removal of virtually all aliens, including MS-13 gang members, the worst gang anywhere in the world, they say. Evil, evil gang. She ended all of our programs that we instituted to stop child and woman trafficking. The trafficking is at a level now that it's never been before. I had it down to the lowest level it's been in 32 years because we had such a strong border. They couldn't get through. But now it's the worst it's been in 32 years plus. And then she lost, and this is probably the worst statistic of them all, 325,000 children. Think of that. 3.5 years. She lost 325,000 children. And they're either dead, being sold into sex slavery, or just plain missing. Think of the number, 325,000. If that were a Republican instead of her, and she was the border czar, she says, well, I wasn't the border czar. She was. And tomorrow she'll make a case that, oh, she did a fairly good job. You can't say much. You can't justify it. She should save her airfare. She should go back to the White House and tell the president to close the border. He can do it with the signing of just a signature on a piece of paper to the Border Patrol. Instead, she's going there to try and convince people that she wasn't as bad as everybody knows she was. She was the worst in history. Grossly incompetent, weak, and ineffective. And all you have to do is ask Brandon Judd, Border Patrol. You could ask any of them. Tom Homan. We had the best people that we've ever had, and they said Trump was the best president on the border ever. She ripped up every single reform that we put in place to stop asylum fraud. She ended a travel ban that was unbelievably successful. We had the strongest travel ban anywhere in the world, and it was upheld by the United States Supreme Court. She canceled Title 42. That was a medical title. She canceled it, very hard to get. And altogether, she took 93 executive orders that I put on, all which made the border the best border we've ever had in recorded history. And she terminated them along with Joe Biden, the worst administration in the history of our country. And on the border, it's not even close. Because of these acts, in less than 4 years, 21 million illegal aliens at least. That's the real number. You don't hear that. You hear 15, 16. Sometimes you hear 17. The number is at least 21 million. And on top of that, you have gotaways. That's gotaways. That's people that came over or got away. And they've stormed across our border like nobody in history on any border anywhere in the world. There's never been any border in history where you had millions of people storming us like that. No third world country would allow it. But she allowed it because she's incompetent. She allowed it because she never went there. She says she went once, but it was not the right location. It was a location that was very mild and no danger. She never went there. She's going there tomorrow after almost 4 years. She's going there tomorrow to try and show you what a great job she did. But even now, the numbers are terrible. And remember, they're flying people over, and they haven't stopped that. They're flying hundreds of thousands of people over the border right now. They never stopped that. They didn't think they'd be caught, but they were 2 weeks ago. From prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylum, all these insane asylums where you have the sickest people, mentally ill people, and terrorists at record levels. We've never had terrorists come into our country like this. They come, and they keep coming and coming, and nobody has ever seen anything like it. People that go to the border, they look professionals, and they said there's never been anything like this in the history of the world, and they are destroying the fabric of our country. She did nothing to stop any of it. In fact, she encouraged them to keep coming, and you know that. For years she did. Only recently did she say, oh, well, we're going to try and put a stop to it.
She literally flew to Guatemala as like her first part of her vice presidential border czar duties and told them famously, do not come.
Including unrelated elements to what we're talking about now, like taxes, like military, like so many other things. Why didn't she do it? She's got plans for the future. Why didn't she do it? She's been there almost 4 years. Kamala created a brand new program to fly in migrants from Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua, and resettle them in American communities, including small towns all across our nation, but in particular in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. Nobody can believe it. These towns have been destroyed, and the mayors of the towns and the governors of the states can't talk about it because they're embarrassed that they allowed it to happen. In addition, through her phone app, something totally new now, it's a phone app for migrants, where migrants call in, highly sophisticated migrants. She's allowed virtually unlimited numbers of illegals to press a button, schedule their illegal immigration appointment at our ports of entry, and show up to be released into the interior of our country. Can anybody believe this? And they're invading our towns. It's an invasion of our country like no country has ever had to suffer before. And this was
He's talking about the streamlined application that doesn't even work appropriately.
A mistake on their part. They did this on purpose because their policies are so wrong and so evil and so unfair. And there's only 3 reasons they'd want to do that. Number one, they're incompetent, and I'm not sure that that's the reason. Number 2, they want it for the votes. And number 3, you know what that one is. We don't have to talk about that one.
Wait, what?
But there can only be a very few reasons.
Wait, what is that?
Because they're destroying our country at a level that's never been seen before. Importantly, as part of this con job, it's a con job. None of the illegal aliens she is smuggling in through the ports or on the airplanes. Think of it. Big jet planes loaded up with migrants flying into the middle of our country and going to Iowa and lots of other states. They've all become border states. We only have border states now, but they're counted in the Border Patrol statistics. And when you do that, you can add a lot of numbers because they're not taking those counts. They want to have those counts not included in the numbers. In Aurora, Colorado, Springfield, Ohio, where it's been a mass invasion, these were 2 beautiful, successful towns, idyllic, and they're in trouble, big trouble. And very unfair. The people want to leave. They want to get out. But everyone's afraid to say, I want to get out, because they want to be politically correct. And other towns just like them, hundreds of them all over America. Americans have watched their communities destroyed by this sudden, suffocating inundation of illegal aliens. It's an invasion. This influx has overwhelmed our schools. They're taking the seats of students that can no longer go there, and they don't even speak English. They're trying to fire a lot of people and hire interpreters. Can you believe that? They want to get rid of some people. They want to hire. Springfield is looking, the mayor said it the other day, looking for interpreters because nobody in all of the 32,000 people that took into the town, think of this, you have a town of 50,000 people, and almost instantly you have 32,000 people, in this case from Haiti. Most of them don't speak English, so they're looking for interpreters. You have to get them out. We have to save our country. You have to save these towns. They flooded the job market with low-wage migrants, but many cases migrants that also have horrible records, drug dealing, so many different things, a lot of human traffickers, and it's mostly human traffickers in women. Last month, American-born workers lost 1.3.
I just want to point something here. He's talking about migrants that are processed through TPS, which means that they get their background checks. The application that he's talking about also is another part of this. And it's like literally Customs and Border Patrol processing these migrants. So therefore, everything he says about these people is wrong. One, they are legal migrants. He's complaining about legal migrants, saying he wants to deport legal migrants. That's number one. Number two, he's lying and saying that they're actually and whatnot. They're not. They literally cannot have a background for them to be able to get that TPS clearance.
Before Hispanic also, they're suffering, and the families are suffering.
It also doesn't make any sense because they're stealing the jobs, but they're also somehow simultaneously still doing like drug dealing. Like they're both dealing drugs and also stealing the jobs.
Last month, think of that. And now we've gained out of that number 635,000 jobs, but every single one of them was an illegal migrant. They've also, as you know, and you've heard me talk about it, just happened very recently, we found out, 818,000 jobs were fraud. They fraudulently claimed that the economy picked up 818,000 more jobs than they stated. And a whistleblower or leaker let it be known that that was false, that the 818,000 jobs was a false fraud. It was a fraud. It should be investigated, by the way.
He's talking
But
about
Biden
ghost
knew
jobs.
about it, and Kamala knew about it. And they were going to release the real figures right after the election. But by putting 818,000 phony, fake, disgusting jobs that don't exist, by putting them on the rolls, it made them look much better a short while
Wait,
ago.
what? Never mind. I don't
They
know what
didn't
he's
quite
talking
make
about.
it to past election day. So to that whistleblower or leaker, I want to, on behalf of the American public, thank you very much. These people are a fraud. Just like nobody talks about it, but Kamala never had a job at McDonald's. Her resume talks about McDonald's. When I worked at the French fry counter, it was so tough, so hot. She didn't work there. She never worked at McDonald's. It was a lie. Most heartbreaking of all is Kamala's migrant invasion has brought massive into our country at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We've never seen levels like this. And during the debate, I mentioned
Yeah, an unprecedented dropping. He's not wrong. We've never seen it before. The dropping by unprecedented
I
levels.
think we did great. But David Muir of ABC, fake news, when I said that is way up in our country, he corrected me. He corrected me on so much, and it was right what I said. He didn't correct her one time, and what she said was wrong. Absolutely wrong. So many different, Charlottesville, she was wrong. All of the different things, almost everything she said, and she was never corrected. But he corrected me, and he said, no, it has not gone up. I said, it's gone up massively. He said, I'd like to state for the record that has not gone up.
But it hasn't. It hasn't gone up. It's gone down.
See that there will be no corrections of any kind, and they're the deal. Why? Because they're bad people and they're fake news. So he did it many times to me during the debate. The deal. That's the deal. Because you can take anything and
It's wild. It's
try
wild
and
that this is just like
up stories
a
with
prominent
it.
fixture.
we had a deal where that wouldn't happen. You
Where-
could do whatever you wanted as soon as the debate was over. But he did it in total of
A
what our
prominent
agreement was,
fixture
and
in the Republican arsenal of communications is basically just lying and lying and lying over and over again
what it was.
in the face of like abject truths.
The other
and just,
person I never heard of
Like
her,
back
I
in the
never
day, they
wanted
at
to
least
hear
used to
of her. She was
try
wrong.
and say something.
I don't know how she ever got it.
Like they would cherry pick data, or they would lie by omission. They would use like the normal ways in which you can lie, but then have some level of plausible deniability. Nowadays, they just openly are like, nah, they're eating cats and dogs. And is up. Shut the fuck
Are
up.
now illegal aliens. They've given you the fake stories that the illegals coming into the country are much better than our people. They don't commit. These are some of the worst anywhere in the world. And they don't just come from South America. They come from all over the world. The Congo in Africa, a lot of them coming from the Congo. The Middle East, Asia. They do come from South America, but not all. They're coming from all over the world, and they're emptying out their jails, and they're emptying out their mental institutions. The money they're saving is beyond belief, and what they're doing to our country. And if I were the president of one of those countries, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd say, let's empty out our jails into the United States. We're dumping ground for the rest of the world, and it's going to stop starting on January 20th. But the most important day in the history of our country is going to be November 5th, Election Day. 3 months ago in Queens, an illegal alien released into our country by Border Czar Harris approached two 13-year-old children with a machete in broad daylight, forced them into the woods, tied them together by the wrists, and the young girl hurt the girls very, very badly. They caught him because he put it on tape. He put it on film. They caught him. He thought it would be nice to have it on tape to show his friends. In June, 2 NYPD officers were at point blank range by an illegal migrant from Venezuela. By the way, the rate in Venezuela is down to the lowest level it's ever been that they know of, because they've taken their street gangs, they've taken their off the streets, they've taken their drug dealers, and they've emptied their jails almost. They'll be emptied very soon, within the next 2 months. I guess they can't get enough buses, but they're bringing people at record levels to our country. And their rate is the lowest it's been ever that anybody can remember. Caracas has become a safe and wonderful city, unlike our cities that are getting worse and worse.
Bro's running for president of Venezuela, dude.
Horrible invasion that Kamala, in particular, because I'm no fan of Biden. He's been a terrible president, doesn't know what he's doing, and he proved that during the debate. But you know what? He assigned her the job, and whether you call her a border czar or just say that she was put in charge of the border, doesn't make any difference. Same thing. She's done a horrible job, and she'll be out there tomorrow standing probably in front of the wall that I built, trying to say what a wonderful job she did, and the fake news will believe her because that's what they want to do.
That's great, man. I love that.
I hope everybody out there understands that. The Border
I love
Patrol
that, as
custody
predicted, when Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party go right on immigration, obviously these assholes go even further right on immigration. Wonderful. All they do when they do this, when the Democrats do this, by the way, is normalize right-wing sentiment. If you don't address some of the insane lies that Donald Trump is telling a mile a fucking minute, all you have done in that process is normalize these lies. And you have people on your side of the political spectrum believe it. Wonderful stuff.
Her by force with a metal pipe, and her again and again, over and over, and hurting her very badly. In Indiana this June, a woman was kidnapped by 2 illegal aliens, brought to a house, held down, and then forced into the back of a car while illegals drove around talking about how to her. Let's find out how to. She threw herself out of the moving vehicle, was badly hurt, but escaped. And she said, "They didn't mean to me, they meant to me." That was her statement. Earlier this year, an illegal migrant from Haiti granted entry by Kamala and her horrible policies, and in particular her phone app, which nobody can even believe exists, and the people that deal with the phone app.
I think it's pretty wild that, like, there's a sum total of like 60 plus and total committed by undocumented migrants in this current fiscal year. And Trump has mentioned approximately half of them in the process of his remarks. Now, if the American government was not like actually actively targeting whoever does, right, local municipalities, police officers and whatnot, we're not actively targeting these people that are doing and then arresting them, you would maybe have an opportunity to say what is going on here. Okay. The issue, however, is that when you look at the actual reality, when you look at the actual data, and you find out that undocumented migrants are 4 times less likely to do property in comparison to natural-born U.S. citizens, or 2.5 times less likely to do any in comparison to natural-born U.S. citizens, you realize that hyper-focusing on undocumented migrants in this way is simply to just make it seem as though every undocumented migrant is out there mentally ill, an escapee from an insane asylum, walking around with a machete to go and mutilate people. That is what the actual problem here is, when that is the opposite of the reality. Okay? And if there is no one that will speak truth to this insanity, to these racial screeds that Donald Trump is routinely pumping, then more Americans are going to believe it.
Hasn't she done it? And why didn't she do it almost 4 years ago? All of these things she could have done 4 years ago. You will hear Kamala claim that the reason the border is not secure is that Congress has refused to pass her atrocious border bill. It's the worst bill you've ever seen. It would allow people to come in here at levels that would be incredible and would allow them to get citizenship.
The story you told us about Sherry Papini, who went to prison for making up the whole story. Wait, what? California woman who pleaded guilty to faking her own kidnapping and lying about it to the FBI was released from federal prison into community confinement. Online jail records show that she will be at location overseen by residential reentry management. Papini was sentenced to 18 months in prison in September after pleading guilty to 2 counts of a 35-count indictment, admitting to mail fraud and lying to a law enforcement officer. The charges didn't stem from her faking her abduction, but rather the lies she continued to tell for years afterwards. Papini crafted an elaborate lie telling authorities that 2 Hispanic women had abducted her. Her story began to unravel when investigators found male DNA on her clothing that led them to her ex-boyfriend, whom she had been staying with while she pretended to be missing. He dropped her off along Interstate 5 when she said she wanted to go back home.
They're trying to make it look better now, but the damage was done over the first 3 years. They're trying to do anything to make it look better because it doesn't poll very well for them, but it polls very well for me. I think I won the election in 2016 because of the border. I fixed the border. I couldn't even talk about the border. My people would say, sir, nobody's listening. You fixed it. Nobody cares in 2020. Then I got millions of more votes in 2020 than I got in 2016, the most votes of any sitting president in history by far.
Wait, no.
But I couldn't talk about the border because I fixed it.
Joe
You know,
Biden got
it.
more
It was
votes,
great.
man. What the fuck?
Now we can talk about the border.
That's such a, oh my God, every part of this is just so stupid. Like, his lies are not even good.
And by the way, 25 times worse and more deadly than the border in 2016. A good border by compared to this. But it would provide illegal
he's a sitting president.
Alien taxpayer-funded lawyers. Every illegal alien would have a taxpayer-funded lawyer.
But Joe Biden is a current sitting president.
And funnel millions of dollars of left-wing organizations, people, to come into our country. It would enable human trafficking. And by the way, she also wanted to have transgender operations for illegal migrants that were in detention. Now think of that. She also wanted, as you know, to defund the police. She wants to defund the police. She was one of the leaders in the defund the police movement, and that lasted for years. And anybody that wants to defund the police for one day should never have the right to be president of the United States. And she was one of the leaders in that movement. But think of that. She wants to give sex change operations to people in detention that came in illegally and are classified as illegal migrants. If they want a sex change operation, she said, that's okay, we'll do that. The only way to secure our border is to fire radical border czars.
I don't get it. This is one of those things where it's like, is this good or bad? Because if sex change operations are like evil and mutilating, then don't you want that to happen to the migrants? Like, don't you want to punish the migrants? So technically, Kamala Harris is like punishing the migrants harder than you by transing them. What happened? This only makes sense if you're like, they're giving migrants gender-affirming care, and I hate that because gender-affirming care is great, and our American citizens should be able to get it instead. You know? Like, which one is it? What's going on here? Like, I thought you hated these migrants.
Before being
and I thought you hated gender-affirming care. So Kamala Harris is just punishing them by transing them.
Is massively up in our country. It's very lucky the Department of Justice released numbers right after that debate. Somebody in there might like me, but they released numbers, giving the real numbers, and the numbers were unbelievably, shockingly high, the highest ever. And I haven't gotten an apology. I want an apology from ABC. She supports free taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens, and even, as I said, some of the horrible things that she's willing to do, including the sex change operations for people in detention. She called for abolishing immigration detention centers. She wants to have detention centers, but detention centers that you can get out of. Remember when in 2014 Obama built cages and the fake news tried to say I built them? Fortunately, we had a great American that said, no, these were built during the Obama administration, and Biden knew about it, but I don't think Biden knows too much. And we have one other thing.
Once again, doesn't
that
make
she's
sense.
called. She's called the grandmother
pro-children
of
in
sanctuary
cages.
cities. I'm going to terminate all sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for, and you know, you can go to California where she ruined San Francisco. She destroyed. San Francisco may have been the greatest city in the world 16, 18 years ago, and now it's a practically unlivable place. And I hate to say that. I have property in San Francisco. It's not a good thing to say, but this far supersedes my ownership of property. It's an unlivable place. It was the best city. Bob Tisch of Lowe's, friend of mine, great guy, wonderful man. He was in San Francisco. He was in Chicago. He had big businesses all over, the Tisch family. Bob Tisch used to tell me that he thinks San Francisco is the greatest city in the country. He passed away quite a while ago, and San Francisco probably was, and now it's not even livable. She destroyed it when she was the DA, and she destroyed the state of California along with Gavin Newsom. She destroyed the state of California when she was the AG. If you can't say the phrase illegal alien, she said, then we can't trust you to secure the border. She said, you're not allowed to say the phrase under any circumstance, illegal alien, but that's what they are. And it's that simple. She didn't want you to use that term. If you used that term, you'd be fired. And by the way, she fired everybody in a row. She couldn't get along with anybody. You know, it's interesting. 5 months ago, she was considered the worst vice president in history. She was laughed at, scoffed at for 3 years. She was the worst. Her staff hated her beyond belief. They were quitting. She had almost nobody wanted to work there. She couldn't get people to work for her. And she was just considered as bad as it gets. And she wasn't going to be chosen. No way that she was going to be chosen to replace Joe Biden. We had the debate. After the debate, they said, oh, this guy, we got to change him. I think we were up 21 points. But they went in there, and everyone knows they threatened the 25th Amendment. They threatened him with the 25th Amendment. They said, Joe, you're going to get out. And Nancy Pelosi led the charge. And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that. Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that.
I mean, he's right.
Also be prosecuted.
I hate to give up like this, memes like this, her flowers, but he's right.
Number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard. And I hope you all read John Solomon and what John Solomon wrote 2 days ago, because if you read it, you'd see that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing wrong. It's a scam. It's a scam. On day one of my new administration, I will stop all migrant flights immediately. They should stop them tonight. She can do that. Just sign one little page saying stop the migrant flights. But she won't do that. They're infecting our country. They're destroying our country. I will shut down all entries through the migrant phone app, something that most of you haven't even heard of, but it's very active and taking in thousands and thousands of people a week. I will end catch and release, and I will remain in Mexico. I'm going to tell Mexico, thank you very much. You're putting it back right away. You're putting it back, and they will do it too when I tell them. I will bring back Title 42. I will send a federal law enforcement large group
Nothing
of people,
funnier than Trump talking about Venezuelan migrants
liberate Aurora,
when he is
Colorado,
directly responsible both on the processing side for offering TPS, including but not limited to extending TPS to Venezuelan migrants on his way out, but also responsible for the horrifying conditions in Venezuela by greatly accelerating the sanctions regime against the Venezuelan government and the Venezuelan economy in an effort to, absolutely destroy that country. And of course, people saw that there was TPS to be had in the United States of America, so they came here. The app real? Yes, it is. It's a good thing. The application, the only criticism I have for the immigrant application is that it's not good enough. What do you mean? It's a part of legal migration, chat. These are people that are, like the Customs and Border Patrol basically created a process in which instead of filing paperwork, you just file an application. It's the same process. It's just more streamlined. It's a government application. Anyway.
To pour across our border. This will be much larger than that, but we will get rid of the drug dealers. We will get rid of the human traffickers. We will get rid of the people that came out of jails and the people that came out of mental institutions. They will all be gone, and it'll happen very quickly.
It's such an insane thing to complain about. Like, you're literally complaining that we have found a method to faster process undocumented migrants and offer them documentation. Because never forget, the difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented migrant, like a legal immigrant versus an illegal immigrant, is paperwork. He's mad that there's paperwork.
Anything she says tomorrow, you know, is a fraud, because she was the worst in history at protecting our country. So she'll try and make herself look a little bit better, but it's not possible. Normally, I would save this speech till after she leaves, but there's not a thing she can say to make it change. As you know, President Zelensky has asked to meet with me, and I will be meeting with him tomorrow morning at around 9:45 in Trump Tower. And it's a shame what's happening in Ukraine. So many deaths, so much destruction. It's a horrible thing. And one of the things that are very bothersome to me is the fact that Europe is paying only a small fraction of the money that the United States of America is paying. And we have an ocean between Russia and ourselves. They don't. So I see what's happening there. It's very, very sad. But
he said
we're
he
in
wouldn't
for
meet with
numbers that
Zelensky, by the
nobody
way.
can even believe. And as you know, the European nations as a...
Zelensky was in America, and he was like, yo, let's link up and build. And he was like, nah, dog. He was like, nah, fam, you. And you know it's not because of the Logan Act. Or was it the Hatch Act? No, it's the Logan Act, right? Like the president trying to secure favors from foreign official in an effort to win the election. Yeah, the Logan Paul Act. No, I was confusing it with Hatch Act, which is another thing that he regularly, which is campaigning on official government property and I think like funneling money to his business. I mean, he did everything. Anyway, he leaked the message. Oh my God, he's
Pouring
such a bratty.
Nobody else wanted to say that, and the press thought it was terrible that I made that statement. But if I didn't make that statement, we'd still be paying. You know, we were paying for NATO, most of it, almost all of it, maybe all of it for years. So I'm going to see President Zelensky tomorrow, and thank you all very much.
Oh, so he is linking up with him. He is linking up with him. I thought he said he wasn't going to, and then he leaked the message. W collab.
I thought you had the worst mayor ever that we had prior to him. I will say this. I watched about a year ago when he talked about how the illegal migrants are hurting our city and the federal government should pay us and we shouldn't have to take them. And I said, you know what? He'll be indicted within a year. And I was exactly right, because that's what we have. We have people that use the Justice Department and the FBI at levels that have never been seen before. So I wish him luck. I don't know anything about what he did, but I told a lot of people right over there, that group was saying, you know, sir, you were right about that. When they mentioned that, I said, they came in and he was pretty strong about it. He said, this is really unfair to make us carry this burden. We shouldn't be doing this. This is New York City. I mean, your parks are loaded up. I just passed recently Madison Avenue, the Roosevelt Hotel. It's like nobody would recognize it. That's Midtown. But he came out very strongly against it. He was right.
Yeah, that's why they indicted him, because he was anti-undocumented migrant.
And I said, he will be indicted within a year, and that's what happened. And I noticed the indictment's very old. It goes back a long time. Well, I had the same thing. They went way before the statute of limitations. So I wish him well, but I said that he will be indicted because he did that. You take a look. That's what they do. These are dirty players. These are bad people. They cheat, and they do anything necessary. These are bad people. And we need an honest Justice Department. We need an honest FBI, and we need it fast. Yeah.
Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right? Yeah. But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well. It's very early, but he's popular, and I'll be seeing him, and I'll send you a regards.
He's not popular.
Who are you with? Who are you with?
I'm with GB News in the UK.
Okay, good.
Would you rather Nigel Farage had a bigger role?
Well, I think Nigel is great. I mean, I've known him for a long time. He had a great election, too. He picked up a lot of seats, more seats than he was allowed to have, actually. They acknowledge that he won, but for some reason you have a very strange system over there. You might win him, but you don't get him. Nigel is a fantastic person.
Mr. President.
Yeah, it's GB News, Chad. It's their fake Fox News in the UK.
Oh, then I should immediately cancel my appointment. No, he knows. He knows I understand. Look. I hate to see the carnage. If I were president, it never would have happened. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. Never, ever. And by the way, President Xi would have never even thought about Taiwan, which he's thinking about very seriously now, flying planes over it every single day. But President Putin would have never attacked. When I look at the horror show that's gone on, and the level of death is far greater than what is being reported. When you look at those cities, they're all knocked down, those beautiful, gorgeous golden domes, they're shattered and lying on their side, never to be replaced again. You can't ever replace that. 2,000 years old. When you look at the heritage of that really very vibrant country in so many different ways, and you see how it's been so broken, the people...
Ukraine, a very vibrant country.
Where they have to use old soldiers, old men, and young boys because they're running out of soldiers. It's a very terrible thing. And then you see that the United States is paying for most of it, and Europe is not chipping in. And all you have to do with Europe is the same thing I did with NATO. Say you have to pay. And if you say you have to pay, they will. It's very unfair to the United States, but I look forward to seeing him tomorrow. We'll see. I do believe, I disagree with him. Well, he doesn't know me, but I disagree. But I will say this. I believe I will be able to make a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky quite quickly.
But what does that look like? What does that look like? What does that
I don't want to tell you what that looks like.
The Vice President suggested today that your strategy with Ukraine amounts to surrender to Russia. How do you respond to that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And it's not a surrender. What my strategy is to save lives. I want to save lives. Millions of people are dead. Millions more than they even think about. And it's not my fight, but it is a fight to save humanity.
Would you encourage
That is a
Zelensky to give up
that is a
territory to reach
terrible.
peace?
Let me explain. That is a terrible war that would have never happened, and it didn't happen. I even have Democrats. I watched them on Deface the Nation and some of the shows this weekend.
Russia
And
never
they
invaded
said, well,
Ukraine?
we agree that it wouldn't have happened if Trump were president. I was very generous of them. But it would have never happened. That's what bothers me even more. There was no reason for that war to happen, but it did happen, and millions of people are dead, including soldiers from both sides. It's so sad to see it, and I'll meet with President Zelensky, and we'll see what happens, but I believe I can work that out.
Would you encourage
It would have been, I will say this, it would have been a lot easier to work out prior to the start. And Putin never, ever even thought about going in. And it was the apple of his eye. I knew him very well, had a very good relationship, despite the Russia hoax. It was a total hoax. But we had a very good relationship. Fortunately, otherwise we could have ended up in war over that. It's very dangerous. You know, when you make up stories like that, it's very dangerous. The laptop from hell was very dangerous. But Putin told me often, it's the apple of his eye. But I said, Vladimir, don't even think about doing it. He would have never done it. And then, of course, through stupid oil policies and energy policies where oil get up to almost $100 a barrel, Putin said, wow, I have a lot more money than I thought I had. And he prosecuted the war. But even if it went up, and it wouldn't have gone up like that, that's what caused inflation, that and stupid spending for the Green New Deal, which was a Green New Scam, turned out. Do you notice that they don't ever mention anything about environment anymore? What happened to the environment? They don't mention it. They don't mention that the ocean's going to rise a quarter of an inch over the next 500
years. This is like good
they don't
Trump,
mention it
okay?
anymore. It's incredible.
Like good for his own audience and good messaging.
What they should start mentioning is nuclear warming, because we're in grave danger. The world
That right
is in
there
grave
is like
danger.
old school Trump
Everybody gets
using
smart
the
people,
democratic
you know.
incompetence
During
against
my
them to
term,
be
I
like,
never
what
mentioned the
happened?
word nuclear.
Do you not care about the environment no
But that's
more?
the
What's
wing
going
back.
on
We're
there?
gonna have to be
Or
very
maybe it was
careful
fake and you know it is like
And we're very close to
exactly
World War
the type of
III.
messaging he should be hammering on,
Whether
like
it's the Middle
immigration
East
too,
or
which he
that.
does a little bit more
October
now.
7th would have never happened. Iran had no money. I guess that's probably why you hear the stories about Iran. Only a consequential president would have this happen. Only a consequential president. But Iran would have made a deal with us. It would have been a great deal for them. The only thing is they cannot have nuclear weapons. And we would have had it because Iran had no money during my administration. They were broke. And they would have made a deal and they would have been happy. And they would have had an unbelievable civilization. But it didn't work out that way because of a thing that was very sad to watch. That was the election, a very sad thing to watch.
Would you still make a deal with them now after everything that's happened? If you were reelected,
Make a deal with who? Make a
deal
deal with who?
Would you try to make a deal with Iran of some kind if you were reelected?
Sure, I would do that. Sure. I believe in getting, it doesn't.
Why are you hyping him up?
I have a,
I famously
I have a
hate
great
the
memory, but it's a
environment and also hate migrants. That's why I'm hyping him up and not actually offering sound analysis. A lot of what Trump is saying is really horrible, okay? Like horrible on the moral grounds. But sometimes he is still capable of presenting a genuine threat in terms of his messaging. That was one of those moments where he did it, where he had a good one.
After the election. They could have done that too, but they had no idea how to go about it. They could have done it because I gave them a country that wanted to make a deal. They had to. There was no money to Hamas. There was no money to Hezbollah because Iran didn't have the money. Now Iran has $300 billion. They made it all in the last 3.5 years. The sanctions came off. They made it all in the last 3.5 years. Plus, they essentially have Iraq as a subsidiary, and Iraq has $300 billion. So Iran is a very rich country. They have $600 to $650 billion, including Iraq. Iraq doesn't like it when I say that, but that's true. They're really a subsidiary because foolishly Bush wiped out. You had two powerful forces. One of those forces got wiped out. And now the other force, after 1,000 years, walks in and just essentially takes it over. So it's very sad to watch. But Iran now is a big force because they're very rich. Iran was not rich at all. Iran didn't have the money to take care of the various organizations of terror. Okay.
Yesterday at the UN General Assembly came together to call for an immediate ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is speaking at the UN tomorrow. He has refused to do that. What would you do differently to prevent the Middle East?
Well, you have to have that ended one way or the other. The world isn't going to take it. You have to have that ended, and I would think that we're getting close to a point where maybe it can end pretty soon. But you're going to have to end. That's unacceptable. The whole thing over there is unacceptable. That's another one. October 7th would have never happened. Would have never happened. Ukraine and Russia would have never happened. Think of it. Would have never happened. Inflation would have never happened. Think of the world. The Afghanistan pullout in that way. We would have pulled out, but we would have pulled out with dignity and strength. I'm the one that got it down to that number. But I would have kept Bagram, because Bagram is this massive Air Force base that we built many, many years ago with billions and billions of dollars, the most powerful runways that can hold more load than any other runway in the world. And we walked away from it. And it wasn't Afghanistan that was the problem. We walked away from a great military base that we built to the highest specifications that was 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. We are being run by Kamala, who is grossly incompetent. All you have to do is look at her interview last night, look at her interview with Oprah, look at her interview with the gentleman from Pennsylvania. All you have to do is look around and you'll see it. We had 4 years of incompetent leadership as a country sustain another 4 years. Thank you very much.
Are you going to pull your endorsement of Mark Robinson?
I don't know the situation.
Terrible pause.
Do you believe that Ukraine should turn over some of its own land to Russia in order to end the war?
We'll see what happens.
What's your message to
We'll
Zelensky
see what
tomorrow?
happens. Let's get some peace. We need peace. We need to stop the death and destruction. Don't you think? Wouldn't that be nice? Huh?
Do you have a plan to meet Benjamin Netanyahu in person?
Well, we're going to meet a lot of people. Many of the leaders have been calling me, and they want to.
He can't fucking just be like, Democrats just want to continue the death machine in Ukraine
We're leading in the
because they're getting paid. because they're making money off the military-industrial complex, and like they don't want to have any sort of conversation with the enemy in this circumstance. But all war ends up, all wars end with treaties. The reason why he can't say that is because he's also obviously a slave to the same exact corporate interests. He's also a slave to the military-industrial complex. So that's precisely the reason why he can't even like adequately message himself as like adequately message himself around this issue. Same goes, obviously, I mean, for Israel, he can't say it because he is deeply in the pockets of Miriam Adelson.